Okay, so today I am doing a sports carnival, athletics carnival, sports day, whatever your children call it in wherever you're from. I am doing a sports carnival layout and I'm using my distress oxides. The problem I had here is I really like doing a gradient title, but I've run out of finger daubers for my distress oxides. So I didn't want to move these off the cutting mat that they were on because it makes it so much easier. So I decided that I would just use the edge of a normal dauber, and it blends because these distress oxides are so I don't want to use the term buttery because they're really creamy. They're very lush when mine are all brand new. So for me, I love them. They blend together beautifully. You can see there. So I've peeled it off. Now, this is where I'm just showing you a little trick. If you've got an electric cutting machine, Cricut, Silhouette, Brother Scan and Cut, any of those multitude of things, even if you just do it with a die cutting machine, you can create essentially thickers by simply cutting it out a few times and gluing them on top of each other. It's one of those things for me, I don't actually look at this as a bad thing, as a time consuming, oh my God, how boring. It is to watch. That's why I sped that bit up. But it's actually, I find it quite zen to do something like that. Something that's really repetitive, that takes no brain power whatsoever. When it's all said and done, it looks awesome. And I absolutely love playing with, I had to go back. I left the top of my eye, I left on the throwaway piece. So what I've gone ahead and done, I've added all my letters on. I cut them on my Cricut. I cannot tell you what font I used. It's just one of the standard fonts. I have a Cricut membership, so I subscribe. So I couldn't tell you if it's a free one or not, to be honest. I did it and then I got out of it and I didn't save it, which I always do. It's a habit I'm getting into. I'm saving it purely because people want to know what it is that I've used. And up until becoming a content creator, I never used to worry about that side of things. I'd make it and that was it. Okay, so here I learn a couple of very valuable lessons. One, if you're going to use a gigantic stencil like this, don't necessarily just use a bit of the stencil, don't use the whole square. And I'm using my distress oxides. The colours that I chose were Salty Ocean, Mermaid Lagoon, Blueprint Sketch, and then right at the very end I actually came back over with a bit of Broken China. Obviously my daughter's house colour is blue, so that's why I'm doing all the blues. And I came in with the stars because I wanted to do a really heavy mixed media sort of page. Now, on this page, there is no gesso. I'm just going straight onto textured white cardstock. That's it. It's American Crafts textured white cardstock, my go-to. Now, and I'm using the textured side just purely to give it a little bit more oomph to the colours, I suppose. I'm using my brushes that I got from Amazon. They are awesome. If you're wondering why there's a little circle on the back, that is how I tell between my distress inks and my distress oxides. Because we know we can mix inks with oxides, but you can't go back the other way. So now I'm doing this, and all I'm focusing on at this point is getting nice crisp stars. Then I realised, you've just done the entire stencil. And that's when I realised, when you move this, you're going to have lines everywhere. Now, could I fix it? It took a bit of work. I've got to say, it took me a little bit, but this is what learning with a new form of mixed media is all about. You're going to make mistakes. There's no way around it. You're going to make mistakes. It doesn't matter if you've been, like me, scrapbooking for 20 years, or if you're new at it and you haven't picked up a paintbrush or a blending brush in your entire life. Sorry, I just need a drink. I'm doing 3 voiceovers in a row, so my voice is struggling. Okay, so I sort of struggled a little bit with this. It dawned on me afterwards that I have actually bought some smaller, teeny tiny brushes. So I could have got away without doing, see all this over, I'm going to call it overspray, over flick, over, I don't know what you want to call it. I'm just going to call it overspray, because it's at this point that I go, hang on a minute. And I remember they're oxides. You can layer them up. There's a way of fixing this without taking all day. And look at all that overspray. Oh, it's so annoying. So then I just come in with a really light hand, same color, just to add a little bit more depth. That's when this all starts to click in my head. So I know normally if you are a new subscriber to me, I don't edit the daylights out of my videos. I leave in the process. I fast forward it. So obviously I'm not talking then and doing a video for 40 minutes. I fast forward it and I try and keep my videos at about 15 minutes a piece. On average, that's what they sort of work out to be. Now, the reason why I leave in the process, because I don't want any of my subscribers, I don't want anybody that comes to my channel to think the way I used to think. I had a lot of self-doubt in whether I would be able to create a certain look, because they made it look so easy. They made it just look so simple. Guess what? It's not simple. It takes a lot of work. You got to figure it out. And I saved you watching me doing layer upon layer upon layer. You can see there I've got all the different colors on there. So I put my salty ocean down first because that was the closest color that I had to my daughter's skirt and shirt sort of thing. Now what I'm using here is just tracing paper. You can use vellum if you have vellum. I find tracing paper gives you the same effect and it is dirt cheap. So what I've done is I just traced around my title that was it's still on my Cricut mat. I still haven't taken it off. And I just traced around it and then roughly tore around the edges and went, yep, rightio. Now I'm just going to, so what I did here, see how I lined it up? So I lined up the lines. So I can pretty much line up where they were sitting below. So I'm lining them, so I'm just moving them straight up. Does that make sense? You could have lined them up on the actual lines. Your call. You do you. You do what's easiest for you. Now, these, I've got to say, it's the first time I've ever done it like this, and I absolutely love it. Love, love, love it. And because I'm someone as well that I really like to have a nice long title, and that is why I love my Cricut so much, because I can type in whatever, duplicate it 3 or 4 times, and then have it all cut out of one piece of cardstock, and then I can do it like this. I've literally, by having, I think I've got 40 or 50 Distress Oxides. I've got the same in the inks, and that just gives me a plethora of colours, of a colour palette that I should never need to buy a thicker again. I love thickers. Don't, please, I'm not bagging them. I love thickers, and they have got a place in my stash. They have, and I use them for all different things, especially if you want to just do a quick page and the color matches perfectly. My biggest problem is with thickers is I've bought quite a few because I like the colors, not so much the words. And the problem I've got is I get stuck with words that have no meaning to any of my pages. That's my problem. So now don't worry about that little tiny bit of white you can see there on the H and on the L. Don't stress about that. And inside the C, it's art glitter glue. It dries crystal clear. At the end, you don't see it whatsoever. So it's at this point that I'm like, I'm not thinking, and I go ahead, I glue this bit down, which makes perfectly logical sense. So I glued that to the other piece of, I didn't glue the whole, so I've glued it to the other piece of tracing paper. I haven't actually glued it down to the page itself yet. Now, what I wanted to do for my daughter's very, very last sports carnival, up the top, I've got a picture of her when she was at her very first one, and now I've got a picture of her at her very last one. Now, they're just adorable. It's her last one in primary school, and I'm using my T-square ruler here. I'm not being ridiculously pedantic about having them the same width apart, but because they're all the same size, they need to be at least level. So I'm doing this the hardest way possible because when I record, my camera's actually above my head. So I can't lean forward, or all you see is my grey hair. And no one wants to see someone's head. That is why when you watch some of my videos, I turn my page like this. It's so I can get things straight and I can do it quickly and efficiently, and I don't get my head in the shot. So this, I absolutely love how this page turned out. I did have a bit of an issue with my Posca pen right at the very end where I tried to add a little bit of white highlight. I thought it was my Posca pen, but it was actually just going over the Distress Oxides. They were dry, but it was just having an issue for some reason. I don't know what it was, but I'll have a play with that when I'm not videoing. Look at me. What did I just do? You cannot use tape runner on the back of vellum or on the back of tracing paper. You can see straight through it. That's the idea of it. So it's all right. No harm, no foul. I fixed it. It's okay. I've put these slightly offset to each other, so just to create a little bit more of an effect. And that just, I love it. Now these ribbons are ones, I just stapled them together with my little tiny number 10 staples. So this is where I go around, and I tried using the really fine Posca pen, but didn't work. It wasn't working, but I used my bullet tip and it worked perfectly. Just to highlight some of the stars, not all of them. And that's how it turned out. You can see how many pens I threw to the wayside. It just wasn't working for me. But there you go. So that's it. So now I only have one of those ribbons glued down because I wasn't sure if the glue was going to shine through, which it did, but you don't really, once it dried, it was fine. So here's my page. Thank you so much for watching if you're still with me. And you can see there how high they are. They're literally four layers of cardstock thick. So if you enjoyed my video, please, I would love a like and a subscribe, and even leave me a comment, something I could have done differently, or if you know why my Posca pen wasn't working on my distress ink, I'd love to know the answer to that too. I'm learning just like you guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you later. Thanks guys. Bye.